even when we were interviewing people for a video game company, most women would answer, "Oh, I'm not a gamer, but I play video games."
You realize they played a lot of games, but they have a very high standard for themselves. They don't think they qualify. But whereas for boys, it's easy.
Like, women are already very underrepresented, right, in the video games industry. But in being a minority, we are still a majority because there is so many other groups that are even, more underrepresented.
Hello and welcome to Connected. I'm Tomasz Koper, sitting in for Divya Gopalan. Who do you picture when I say the word gamer? Chances are it's someone like me, maybe with a few extra RGB props and a Cheeto-stained t-shirt and fingers. Or maybe not. But I'll bet you my 100% complete set of achievements in Hades that you didn't think of a woman. The reality is that women have become a force in gaming, so why are they stuck in stealth mode to most of the community? To help us answer this question, we welcome video game producer and designer Allison Yang joining us from Washington, D.C. And from Berlin, we have Astrid Gooding, Women in Gaming Ambassador and Business Development Manager at DevCon. Welcome both of you to the show. Allison, let me start with you. Do you call yourself a gamer or do you prefer a different term?
I used to have a difficult time with it, but now I'm perfectly okay.
And Astrid, same question to you. Are you a gamer?
Absolutely.
Well, you're also the ambassador for Women in Gaming. What does that mean exactly? What does that entail?
So Women in Games is a non-for-profit organization that is based in the UK and that has been running since a few years now. And being an ambassador for Women in Games means that I'm advocating. I'm advocating for women in games, but also, I do educational part, I'm going to conferences or other events and speak about female representation in the video games industry and, all the obstacles that we still have to overcome or the difficulties that come with that.
All right, and before we get to that, let's set the tone for the conversation and try to understand why gaming is so readily associated with boys and men. We reached out to Holo, the co-founder of the game company Kabam, and one of the Fortune magazine's 10 most powerful women in gaming. Here's what she said.
I think the term where people have used for people who like to play games has been quite exclusive for quite the longest time. It's gamer. And most of the time, even when we were interviewing people for our video game company, most women would answer, "Oh, I'm not a gamer, but I play video games." Because for the longest time, gamer meant something incredibly specific, that you played a certain type of game, say StarCraft or League of Legends or World of Warcraft. On top of that, video games have had their own special hardware. And if you kind of just track back to even how difficult it was for women to even get into computer science, let alone hardware, working on the space shuttle. All of those things have not allowed women to really be kind of readily available whenever it was ready to go. Qualitatively, I totally think if you had a brother or somebody else your age, guess who hogged that console the whole time? It wasn't the girls, right? We were constantly having to watch. So there was definitely a lot more kind of reps that the boys got when it came to the hardware piece of things. Now, I will say once it moved to mobile, there was an entirely new class of gamers that ended up coming in, which is mobile gamers, and a lot of them were women.
So, Allison, do you agree with this assessment? Would you add anything to it? I mean, you did say that you had initially a problem calling yourself a gamer. So I'm curious how this resonated with you.
The reason I had a problem because before I design games, I write about games. I managed a game column for now 8 years in Hong Kong, and the media is published in Chinese. The whole column is dedicated to game, and sometimes I write about personal experience. One of them is about what's so-called addiction in games in China and my overcoming of it with a therapist. And then I titled it a hardcore game player because it's a story which is also in my life. I skipped classes. I didn't sleep for 48 hours to beat level. But the reader said that's not hardcore. And first of all, you play girl games, or that level is not that hard, or apparently she's a girl, so it's not that hardcore. You didn't play this and that. And it's a lot of attacks and bullying, especially I use my real name. So I was very cautious when calling myself that, just not to direct the conversation to a wrong place. But later I realized as more connected to the industry, and also I teach in university about game design and cultural studies of games, I realized a lot of girls are the same. If you ask a question like who likes to play games or are you a gamer, most people answer your question is boys. And if you don't give up, you probe into your girl students, ask them, you realize they played a lot of games, but they have a very high standard for themselves. They don't think they qualify. But whereas for boys, it's easy. They play the Game Boy. They think they're the master. There's a different confidence and qualification level for things.
Well, Astrid, we heard from Holly Liu, who's one of Fortune's 10 most powerful women in gaming. But my question to you is, are there more than 10? Is it how normal is it to see women in positions in power in gaming?
Unfortunately, it's still not very normal and not a very used thing, unfortunately. But, I still believe that we are getting here. I guess the general problem is that there is only so few women, in the games industry at all. I think the last study that I've seen myself about that was that it was like roughly 22% or 23%, like under 25%, right, of female employees in the video games industry. So when you only have, so little women working in that industry, how many women can then actually achieve to get into a leadership position? As if you only have 5 people, then it's very hard to even get in a higher position because the pool of talent is so small. And I think that is something that really has to change, because the more, like female people or female people actually can become leaders and get into leadership position themselves, then there is more women to follow.
I want to move the conversation to an aspect of making games and an aspect of the industry that is very important, because game development and finding the funding for your idea is harder than beating Cuphead on the highest difficulty. But do women-led projects fare any better? Let's listen to what Holly Liu had to say on that.
The numbers are for female-founded teams. The percentage is the lowest. Like if you have all females, the percentage of VC dollars going into VC venture capital dollars is one of the lowest. And then the next is, the highest is all male, white teams in the U.S., right? And that's where a lot of the VC dollars are. Female founders do traditionally get last. So even if it's a mixed team, they don't get as much of the dollars. And funny enough, they actually perform much better, either profitability-wise, lasting a bit longer. A ton of studies shows that diverse teams beat out non-diverse teams and either get VC dollars or last longer, one of the two. They just don't die, and that's what success looks like.
Allison, question to you. Are things improving in the industry?
Weirdly, I want to say yes and no. Yes, because there's more visibilities for women who are developing games, or because there are supporting roles in game development too, and women are in a lot of these positions like customer service or campaigning, PR, branding. Now people are recognizing that, and then there are special fundings for female game developers or marginalized people who are developing games. And then there's also female game space where like girl gamers are really supportive of girl game makers. But at the same time, there's so much toxic culture around hating women in virtual games or in real game spaces where women are present. Yeah. So it's very hard to see. There's a recent case where in Gamescom in Germany, there's this really big title from China. It's called Black Miss Wukong. If it's going to be finished, it's going to be China's first AAA game. It's good quality. It's really big investment. In Gamescom, there are people lining up for 4 hours to play the demo of the game. But at the same time, the company is so notorious for all these disgusting comments on female game developers and gamers. They literally said they don't need games. They don't need female gamers, and they also made a lot of sexual metaphors about releasing game as if they're releasing sperms, things that are super disgusting. And when female gamers from China saw this game in Germany, you can imagine the hurt they get, and they're trying to say it on Twitter or English media, like, please, while you are welcoming this game, also know that they have this ugly side, especially if you're a woman, even not Chinese. And so many attacks are concentrated on these Twitters, female Twitter account, and they are bullied, their real identities revealed, there are threats calls to their family or emails, and their families were threatened too. So it goes both ways, and it goes to very extreme ways too.
Astrid, I saw you wanted to jump in there.
Oh, absolutely. Like actually different points. Maybe, answering to what you just said first, I think also like a big problem is, in many games, still the representation of female characters. As you just said before, very often like female characters are represented very like sexy and like, like over the top in games. And that is still a thing that is actually going on, right? Good example would be RPGs. In RPGs, you very often have female characters to choose, right? Then look at the male characters. They have the full armor. They have the big shield. They have the big sword. Like they're like completely, ready to fight. And then check the female characters coming in the tiniest tops and, like with only little panties on. Like that is my female warrior. Like why is like my character wearing stuff like that? That doesn't make sense. And like that is still a real thing that is going on in many games, like female characters getting like sexualized. And why is that so, right? Then another thing is that in a lot of games, you don't even have female characters that you could choose from, or, female characters that would be like a side character that is important for the story. I have read a study, but unfortunately, I cannot find the numbers again, that was referring about words like spoken or, like text created of female characters and male characters in games. And like, even if it was like a female protagonist in a game, they even had, only like, I don't remember the numbers again, but very little text, compared to male characters in game. Why are female protagonists or female characters in games like presented like, as the silent sidekick? Like, why don't we have a voice in games? And another thing that I wanted to jump in about the video that we just saw, because I think she mentioned something very important, and that is also that there is studies, meanwhile, that actually present and, give like real numbers that if you're having a diverse team, and that does not necessarily mean that you are having a team that is, made 90% of females or led by a female person, but if you're having like a diverse team, meaning that it's not like cis male only, there is real studies that reflect that those companies are actually having higher revenues. And as she said in the video as well, like if there are struggles, those companies tend to survive longer. So even from like an economic factor, I don't understand why people like to hire so, let's say, binary. No, it's not binary. It's actually like, one-sided, because at the end of the day, we're doing a job because we need money. So I really find it so hard to understand that, like, biases and prejudices can hold us from becoming like even better companies, like economic-wise.
Well,
but yeah, you can see I'm very passionate about the topic.
That's great. That's both great for women in gaming and for our show. But we've heard from North America. We've heard a little bit from Asia. Is Europe faring any better? Is Europe doing any better in terms of including women in the industry?
Oh, well, you know what? It's hard to say yes and it's hard to say no. I believe, since we do have that organization, Women in Games, like, based in UK, and with that coming a lot of, new ambassadors, new people that want to change things and are actively asking, demanding a change, I feel that there is more, like, let's say, more focus given on that now. But especially, I would also say that European women tend to be loud, like compared to other cultures. And that is also, where cultural difference is coming in, right? We European ladies, we do understand ourselves, like we do have a standing. And the younger ladies that now, pushing into that industry, like that is so cool to see. They come with like an understanding that they have a right to be here. And I feel, that in Europe, we do, how would I say that? We do talk about the stuff, even the uncomfortable stuff. If there is stuff happening, you can be very sure it will be published somewhere on Twitter, or it's going to make news at some point. And that is like, don't get me wrong. It's not like I am for doxing and that kind of stuff, like harming people. But I do believe that the internet gave us the great opportunity to now call out on stuff where we have been silenced before.
Well, you mentioned visibility there, and I'm glad you did, because there are few events around the world that hope to improve the visibility of women in the video game industry. One of them was Female Protagonists, organized by the Goethe Institute in Taipei late last year. Now, I want you to meet some of the very talented developers we met there.
What a world would look like.
I think it is very easy for us to lose track of details and things that, sometimes we take things for granted, and to take things that we see in our lives as the default and being normal. So events like this just brings other perspectives into your mind, and to push you to start to think about, is this what we really want, or what is really needed, or what is really normal?
我觉得这样的活动是非常重要的，可以让就是这边的民众了解到女性开发者的重要，还有这样子一个群体存在。然后我也希望透过这样的活动，能够让世界或者是台湾更加关注我们独立的女性游戏开发者。
Even though we're all really aware that it's important to have diverse teams and diverse representation and content in video games, it still really isn't the case.
After graduating, I just jumped right into it, and because I have always wanted to do that, because I had a very fonding memory playing video games when I was a child and with my father. So that just basically brings me to wanting to do something that is just creative and bringing those kind of core memories to people.
I think I did my master's in game design in 2010, and that was, I don't know, more of a coincidence. I just wanted to do something fun, do a different thing with my life, and discovered educational games and realized there's a passion there for me that I can transform education with joy.
对我来说，游戏设计是一个可以把我心里的世界，还有我的想法跟故事传达给玩家还有观众的一个方法，所以我才会选择想要加入游戏这样子的一个行列。
I came into the game industry in the generation after Gamergate, I think is what I would say. I was given the ability to pursue games scholarship because of organizations wanting to think more about like feminist criticism of games in the wake of Gamergate. And then I slowly started critiquing through making, and I realized that making games is really fun actually, and really compelling in its own right, and that I can engage critically with the games industry through the work that I make, not only through scholarship, but through the creative process.
Yeah, the vast majority of video game characters are white and male, which is just a minority of the player base and human population. Yeah, we're struggling quite a bit with that. And also in terms of content, most of it is action and violence related, and a lot of us, to relax and unwind, would rather do something that isn't more stressful than our regular lives. I think to do with computer science in general, and how it has been historically just for a long time in the hand of white men, just being in computer science, computer labs, and just having the time and the resources to make entertainment with that kind of backing.
There's a lot of embedded assumptions that get built into the world that it's clear that in the writer's room are not being questioned in any way. So on a thematic level, there's this way that worlds are maybe kind of tired or reproducing things that are familiar to us without thinking about it.
For a full version of that video, visit our YouTube channel or the TaiwanPlus website. Now, Allison, you were the curator of that event, Female Protagonists in Taipei. What were your goals, and do you think you've achieved them?
I felt so happy watching all the footage because it's like 2 months ago. It feels so far away. The initial goal was very simple because this was in 2023. In 2022, I was doing a community building project in Hong Kong, like using an art space, independent art space, to create events and make people to meet each other, which most of them are gamers or game designers. And as exciting as it is, I and many other people can't help but notice that most of the people who attend these events are boys. And some of the girls are attending the events are actually not gamers. They're my friends. They want to be supportive. And then because of the first time running in Hong Kong, the community building project was pretty successful. So I got the funding to do another one in Taiwan. And then I immediately had the idea of doing a show that focused on female talents. That's why I steal the genre called female protagonist from Steam labels to do this. And I think I achieved this goal and maybe a little bit more because the last game designer you showed in the previous video, he's from Canada. His name is Kalen. And Kalen, when I first met Kalen, he was during the transition of becoming a man. And so when we invited him, he actually posed a lot of criticism against our program, which is already focusing on marginalized group in gaming. But he's saying that maybe you should include more because there's also people who are outside of this circle, and you shouldn't do it one group by one group, but maybe people should come together and share the difficulties and challenges. And our last session is devoted to people who don't identify themselves as female. And it went really emotional because people are, I guess they feel really safe. So they're sharing a lot of personal feelings and traumas and difficulties as non-identifiable subject in the game industry. And I didn't know a lot of the audience who came to the female protagonist events are also non-binary people. So weirdly, they found a place in this event, and some of them even went here from, I think, South Korea, because they know about this, and there were really occasions like this in East Asia. So I feel really happy and proud about that.
Well, after hearing that, I feel it's almost redundant to ask, but Astrid, how and why do events like that matter? Like, to put it bluntly, are they effective?
They are absolutely effective. Like, we do need those, special and like very focused events for this like very special target group. And I think, you just said something very important. Like, women are already like very underrepresented, right, in the video games industry. But in like being a minority, we are still a majority because there is so many other groups that are even, like more underrepresented and maybe, or actually for sure fighting, even like bigger obstacles that they have to overcome. Like, as we call them, the whole Flinter group, which means pretty much everyone but not cis-male people, right? And it is so important to have those safer spaces because those events pretty much create a very safer, we cannot say safe because there is unfortunately no safe spaces everywhere, but they create a very much more safer space for those people to come together, to exchange, to be vulnerable, right? And also to empower each other and to collaborate with each other and to engage with each other. And very often, the outcome of those events is like so inspiring, but also so like very touching and emotional.
That is very encouraging to hear. We're slowly running out of time, but before we end today's show, I want to share with you what Holo wishes would change in the gaming industry in the future. Take a look.
I would love to see more women game developers actually develop games for women. So even the casual game studios are ran by men. There are more and more that are for women, and I'm meeting more and more of those. I also, one of the things that I'm already seeing, which is really great, is just more games that are kind of more mass appeal, which I think is really great. Like Fortnite tends to be appealed to both girls and boys. Roblox, Minecraft, those types of games I think are really, really great. I think this next generation, like definitely 50% of the women are gamers, right? Because they grow up on the iPad, they grow up on a PC, and those two things aren't as cloistered as much as I think the controller was, or even when you first got your computer, when computers were very rare and it was the family computer.
Astrid, I saw you were like jumping around, trying to give us a comment. What's your take on this?
So the good news is there has been just a study, and I think it was done by the German Game Association, about like how many men and female people like are playing game. And the good news is it is 50%. Like female gamers are 50% like of the current gamers, and that is so cool, right? Because we already made like the half of the gamers, and I believe that also like forces developers to develop more games that are appealing to us.
Allison, anything to add to these wishes for the future of gaming?
I think from personal experience, maybe we just need to be more confident and comfortable to identify ourselves in private or public occasions. Sometimes we know, if not more, but at least as much as the guys do, but we just need to say that and let everyone know about it.
Thank you to both my guests for joining us today. Allison Yang, a video game producer and designer, joining us from Washington, D.C., and from Berlin, Astrid Gooding, Women in Games Ambassador and Business Development Manager at devcon. And thank you to all the gamers, no matter who you are or where you are, for sticking around. And if you would like to suggest your own term that would make everyone feel welcome in the hobby we love, head over to our YouTube channel or Instagram. It's been great to have your company. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected.